Okay, so we're filming this week in front of a live classroom audience. So here we are. This is the second C1 weekly homework, Polynomials 1, and yeah, I'm good at talking to the camera. Expressing the form k root 5, where k is an integer each of these. Remember, we can't use a calculator for this. 500, we're going to think what's the biggest square number that goes into it, and it's 100, isn't it? So root 500 is the same as root 100 times root 5, 100 times 5, and so that gives us 10 root 5. That's 1 mark. The second one, 30 over root 5, a simple rationalising the denominator question. We know that you multiply top and bottom by root 5. And so we get 30 root 5 over 5, and we want to simplify this. It does say where k is an integer, so we need to write it as 6 root 5. And finally, we've got 5 root 20 minus 3 root 5. Now root 20 is 4 times 5, 4 being the biggest square number that goes into it. So that's 5 times 2 root 5, root 4 times root 5. Take away 3 root 5, that I make that 10 root 5, 5 times 2. Take away the 3, gives us 7 root 5, and there we go. So that's a kind of question 1 on a core 1 paper, maybe something like that. The next one started with an expand and simplify. Now the method we talked about doing this is you can do it with, you would multiply out 2 brackets to start with, wouldn't you? And you can choose which 2, but looking at this one, it looks like we've got something quite nice going on with the second 2 brackets. If we take the second pair of brackets, we would get a difference of 2 squares. So that's x plus 1 times x squared minus 4. And so in this case, rather than writing out that kind of expanded version, you could just do that it's 2 brackets with 2 terms. You could just do the smiley face or the claw or however you want to do it. We would get x cubed minus 4x plus 1x squared minus 4. And that's the right answer, but it would be nice, wouldn't it, to write it in descending powers of x. That's how we normally express these things. Now, having marked part 2 of this, I want to point out that lots of people did a lot more work than was necessary. Because the question doesn't say multiply out these brackets. And it's really clear on this. This is 3 marks for this first one, and this is only 2 marks. And yet multiplying out these brackets completely is a lot more work than the 3 marks that one was worth. So there's a clue that it's not going to be that much work. So what we're going to do is look for how we could get a power of x cubed. We could get an x cubed by doing the 2x cubed times that 1. Doing that, minus 3x squared times that minus 2x. And that would give us an x cubed. And they're the only ways we could multiply things to get x cubed. And that's all that we're interested in. So that was 2 times 1, minus 3 times minus 2, and 4 times 1. And that, I think, gives us, what does it give us? That's 6 plus 6, isn't it? So that gives us 12 as being the coefficient. And that is all that the question wanted. So quite a few of you are kind of sat looking at a huge amount of working out. And the big danger, of course, with a huge amount of working out is that lots of your focus was on things that you really didn't need to know about. And in the midst of all that, you lost a power of x cubed, or you missed one of the terms out, or an x squared became an x cubed by mistake, or lots of that crept in. So try and keep it as simple as you can. And that's a good thing to look at. Look at the number of marks that the question is worth, and then judge how much work that means you're going to have to do on it. And if you find yourself doing an awful lot of work for 1 mark, there's probably a simpler way. There will be a simpler way of doing it. So the next one was the completing the square. We've got a variety of methods going on with this, but I think from seeing what you did, the most popular is to do the method where you just kind of think it through. You're thinking this will be a 4, That makes that an x squared minus 5. We've still got the plus 5 there. So we think in order to complete the square, we need to have half of the coefficient of x put in that bracket. So that would make it x minus 5 over 2, all squared in there. By the time we've multiplied that out, we would find ourselves adding a 5 over 2 squared. Now when you square 5 over 2, you get 25 over 4, because you would square the top and square the bottom. So we would be adding that, so we need to take away the 25 over 4, except we're adding it 4 times. So we need to take away 25 over 4 times 4. And we already had a plus 5 there. So by the time this settles down a little bit, we've got a minus 25 plus 5 would give us a minus 20 at the end there. And what do you think the common answers that people go wrong on this were? There were loads of 25 over 4s kind of not multiplying it by 4. So loads of people who kept that 25 over 4 and added the 5, so ended up with, what would that be, minus 5 over 4 was the term at the end. So there were quite a lot of that answer. And there were quite a lot of 30s where people had got the 4 correct, but then added it instead of taking it away. So you've got to be really careful about how you deal with that. So that was that one. The question then said, notice that's 4 marks for doing that, and that's genuine core 1 mark allocations. State the coordinates of the vertex of the curve. Well, we said right at the end of the lesson before I gave this out that this you can read straight off this form, and so it's whatever x value makes that 0. So the x value is plus 5 over 2. I'm going to write that again because that's a mess. So the x value is 5 over 2, and the y value is, if that lot is 0, you're left with 0 minus 20, which is minus 20. So the answer should have been 5 over 2 and negative 20. And then, the final thing, solve the quadratic equation. At the time that I gave this to you, we'd only kind of gone over one way of solving quadratic equations, which was factorising. So that was the way I wanted you to do it. Of course, we now know we've got 3 options, haven't we? We can factorise, we can complete the square, or we can use the formula. It's nicest if we can factorise something to factorise it. That's the kind of the more elegant skill. And our method for doing this said you multiply first and last things together to get 30x squared. You then think of 2 things that multiply to give 30 and add to give minus 17, and minus 15 and minus 2 to do that job. So we're going to write it as 5x squared minus 15x minus 2x plus 6. Factorise it 2 terms at a time. Remember, we just look at the 2 terms. So that gives us 5x brackets x minus 3. And if we look at that one, we've got minus 2 times x minus 3. Giving us 5x minus 2 times x minus 3. The question didn't say factorise it, the question said solve it. So we've got a final step where we have to say if 5x minus 2 is 0, then x would be 2/5. The 2 divided by the 5, and that one would give us x as 3 as our 2 solutions. And that was it. And that's maths.